The game went into overtime. That was the text. Not an apology, not fear, not even shame. Just those words, dry and careless, while my body ripped itself apart to deliver his son. His sister chimed in hours later, voice sharp over the phone. Some people are too dramatic about labor. I didn't answer her. I didn't answer him. I held my newborn alone, his tiny chest fluttering against mine. And then, when the blood had barely dried, when I thought I couldn't break any further, the nurse stepped in. She carried a small locked box, silver edges, weighty in her gloved hands. Someone told me to give you this, if he didn't show. That was the moment I knew. Someone else had seen the truth before I did. I wasn't always this sharp. Once, I was soft. I met him when I was 19. His smile had that reckless kind of charm, the kind that convinces you it will save you from yourself. He made promises in parking lots, under summer skies, whispering futures against my skin. I wanted to believe him, and for a while, I did. He was attentive in the beginning. Flowers without occasion, late-night drives to nowhere. The kind of man who'd swear he'd never miss a heartbeat of our life together. I mistook obsession for love, persistence for loyalty. But the cracks began slowly. The nights that stretched too long. The lies too small to matter, until they weren't. I noticed it first with his phone, always face down, always charging in another room. Then came the stories that didn't line up. Working late when his car wasn't at the office, grabbing drinks when the bar tab never showed on our account. I knew before I saw the proof. A woman doesn't need evidence to recognize the moment she's been replaced. She feels it in the way silence grows heavier, in the way intimacy turns cold. Still, when the message came, the one from her, written too boldly for someone who thought she was a secret, it sliced me open. Can't wait till she's out of the way. I didn't confront him. I smiled, I kissed him goodnight, and I began to plan. Anger is sloppy. Revenge, if done right, is meticulous. While he wasted his hours on games and women who mistook borrowed attention for devotion, I studied. Lawyers, bank accounts, custody laws. I learned what he thought I was too weak to understand. I traced every bet he hid, every reckless bet, every lie that could unravel him in court. I recorded conversations. I gathered witnesses. I saved receipts. Each piece of evidence was a nail, and I was building his coffin with steady hands. And then there was the box. The key arrived weeks later in a plain envelope, slipped under my hospital door. No name, no return address, just a small brass key that slid perfectly into the lock. Inside were photographs, dates, screenshots, records of his affair that stretched back years. Someone had been watching him, waiting for me to open my eyes. I never found out who. I never needed to. The day of confrontation came quietly. A mediation room, pale walls, the stale smell of burnt coffee. He sat across from me, smirking, certain he'd walk away with everything, measured in custody, in assets, in the control he'd always enjoyed. I let him talk, let him gloat about what he deserved, and then I slid the folder across the table. Every page a betrayal made tangible. Every signature, every timestamp undeniable. His mistress's messages, his gambling debts, his negligence documented in the hours he wasn't home, hours he couldn't explain. I watched the smirk fade, inch by inch, until all that remained was the hollow recognition that he'd lost. The lawyers didn't look at him. The mediator didn't either. Only me, steady and unflinching, as I detailed why custody would be mine, why assets would be divided in my favor, why his voice would no longer hold power in my life. He tried to speak, but the evidence cut him off. His words were empty. Mine were final. That night, when I came home with my son, I sat in the quiet and breathed. For the first time, the air didn't taste like his lies. I rocked my child and thought about the man who chose overtime over his family, who thought betrayal was something he could bury. I thought about his sister, her dismissive tone, her cruel words. I didn't need to answer her either. The silence was its own verdict. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was written in custody papers, in bank statements, in the empty chair beside me in the delivery room that would haunt him far longer than it haunted me. Because in the end, his punishment wasn't losing me. It was losing the right to ever call himself the kind of man he pretended to be. I look at my son now, his eyes closed in peace, and I whisper the truth into the dark. Your father taught me what betrayal feels like, but you taught me what strength is. And when he tells the story, if he ever dares, he'll talk about the night he lost a game. But I'll remember it as the sun playing.